rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. Oh my goodness, it is the day of the green. That's right. We're gonna go kiss the Blarney Stone, you know. Yeah, anyway. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone who is out there. So hopefully you guys are hopefully you guys are spending your time, your wonderful time, and maybe drinking some green beer, having some Americanized ham and cabbage. Yeah, I'll get to that in just a minute. Corned beef and cabbage is what it is, but anyway, there you go. There you go. It's the little people, the leprechauns. Yeah. We got a lot of that. I got a whole bunch of lore and stuff going on with the leprechaun, the green, and where it all comes from, where St. Patrick's Day and all that comes from. Plus, the marathon has started. Yes, the marathon has started in the Senate. They voted to begin. I mean, it wasn't supposed to happen until tomorrow, but apparently they did it today. They voted to begin the debate on the SAVE Act. And so now we're going to see in action how long they can actually stand up and speak about it, and whether or not the filibuster is going to be put into place by the Democrats. We'll get into all of that, but first, tonight's headline sponsor Tonight's Pledge of Allegiance is being given to us by Bonnie. That's right, Bonnie. And she is up for the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you are of mine, please stand. Remove your hat if you're wearing one like me. Place your hand over your heart and follow along with Bonnie as she recites the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's right. Liberty and justice for all. Whew. This hat's a little not quite the same. If you would like to hear your rendition of the pledge played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself performing the pledge in your style. Take that audio file, video file, whatever kind of file, and attach it to an email. Send it off to me. Send it to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. And I will get you into the rotation. I have 22. I am looking for 26. So that means I need 4 more. If you want to be one of those 4, go ahead and record yourself and then send it in. Now, if the file that you create is too big, you can use one of the online distribution, online storage drives like Google Drive or Dropbox, and you can send them, and you can send them on to, you send a link to me and I'll download it. Or if you use your phone, don't forget to use the share option. That's the SHARE option. And you can send it to me via that. Send it to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. And I will get you into the rotation as quickly as possible. All right, tonight's headline sponsor is none other than, provided I can get it. See, this is what happens when I shift things around. using my green background. Oh, gosh. I hate it when it does that. There we go. The Institute on the Constitution, and they are at theamericanview.com. That's theamericanview.com. And you can go and look at their 3-step plan for restoring the constitutional republic through grassroots education from a biblical worldview by, number 1, pray. That's right. Pray for the country. Pray for, our country. Pray for our president. Pray, pray, pray. You should pray every day. And you can sign up on that page, by the way. You know what? I'm never going all the way down. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, there it is. Contact us or subscribe. You can subscribe to their newsletter. It's right here above my head. Right here. And you can go and subscribe. And if you do, they will send you a daily prayer that you can pray for them. Also, too, you can reach out to book either Massey Campos or Mike Slonerveld. Yeah, I think that's how it's pronounced. Anyway, to speak at an event. Those guys are the top guys there at Self-Evident Ministries. And, yeah, there you go. So you can go and do that. So pray, pray, pray. Then the second thing, of course, is to study. Now, what are you going to study? Well, you're going to study the Constitution. You can start by going and taking their free, 100% free, online, nationally recognized constitutional course. You sign up for that right there, right above my head, and you put in your first name, last name, and email, and they will email you the lessons. It's 100% free. There's 12 of them. They're about 15 to 20 minutes long, so they're really not all that long for you to go through, and you'll learn all about the Constitution of the United States from a biblical worldview. You can also sign up for their in-person classes. You can see here they've got several of them all over the place. There's plenty more where that came from, but they're everywhere, and you can sign up. You can try and find one near you and register for that course. And then what you need to do now, of course, taking the courses is part of the third part, which is ACT. But to really get in on the ACT, what you need to do is you need to become a member or become, and this is the better part, become an instructor. That's right. Become an instructor for them and help them with their grassroots educational mission. And they have a video right here. You can see it's on the screen. You can take a look at this video, and it'll tell you how to become an IOTC instructor. You can also pick up their instructor kit, which is right here, and you can become one of their instructors for that, for them, for the Institute on the Constitution. It's a great way to continue the education and share all of your knowledge. Share everything that you have done, all of the knowledge, crucial knowledge and skills and everything else that you've attained through them. And you can become a certified instructor, platinum instructor, a chapter leader. You can work your way up the program and take it to the next level. Also, what you can also do is up in the upper right-hand corner, there's this little red button called Shop. I know my closed captioning is covering it up, but that's okay. It's up in the upper right-hand corner. You head on over to their shop. You can pick up all of their stuff, but my personal favorite is the Legacy Library right here. The Legacy Library is the leather-bound U.S. Constitution. Yes. It is right here, folks, the leather-bound U.S. Constitution, and you can get those by going to theamericanview.com, go to the shop, and go to the Legacy Library. You'll find it. It's right there. Let's take a look at this wonderful thing. You have 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are water and tear resistant. No cheap glue here, folks. It is stitched all the way through the bindings. Yeah, I know it's kind of hard to see because I had to amp my lights, just so you know. I had to amp my lights because the background is challenging. It's a blue background instead of the typical green for obvious reasons. Anyway, right here, take a look at this book. It's got 6A rounded corners. And as I said, the stitching goes all the way through the leather and the pages contained within. got a 100-year warranty against materials and manufacturing defects, such that such that if something does go wrong, you send it back to the manufacturer and they will either fix it or replace it for free. I have confirmed, by the way, from Massey, that the Legacy Library isn't going anywhere, folks. So you will always have and be able to grab these things and have them available. It is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved. And my youngest whiskey warrior has confirmed that the information contained within will help you achieve your Civics badge in Scouts. Not to mention, you will also achieve that Civics test with this, and potentially even your naturalization test, because there's a lot of information in here that is on all of those. So go and get yours today. Again, go to theamericanview.com. That's theamericanview.com. Check out all of their offerings, their classes, everything. And seriously, if you're going to start with the free online, 100% free online U.S. Constitution course. 12 lessons, 15, 20 minutes a day. And just sign up and do that. And it is, that'll get you started. And then you can go and check out the rest of the Institute on the Constitution's offerings. And I do appreciate them for being a sponsor of the show. Yes. All right. So let's talk about St. Patrick's Day. Yes, St. Patty's Day. Well, first of all, the origin actually goes all the way back. All the way back. St. Patrick's Day, today St. Patrick's Day is pretty secular in nature. A lot of our holidays and everything are grounded in either some sort of a pagan or religious roots. In this particular case, St. Patrick's Day is grounded in religious roots. And the original St. Patrick, by the way, came from England. And he grew up in England. He came over to Ireland. And at the time, he got captured as a slave, and he became a slave in Ireland. He broke free, left the country, became a priest, essentially, in the Catholic Church, and then returned to Ireland to tell people about God and to preach to people about God. Now, the reason why the clover, by the way, became very popular is because he actually used the shamrock itself to describe to the Irish the divinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And he essentially used the shamrock, the three-leaved shamrock, as his description of how the Trinity and God's Trinity, and God's being, to describe it, and so that everybody could understand. And so that's where the shamrock kind of comes into play. Now, ironically, the English, St. Patrick, the English actually, when they depict him, they actually depict him in blue. So the idea of green for St. Patrick's Day actually didn't come into play until a little bit later on. Now, the original observances in Ireland for St. Patrick, first of all, they honor St. Patrick on March 17th because that is believed to be when he died. Now, he died in, I believe it was 461 AD. So we're talking like way back. But anyway, the very first, essentially the first celebrations were essentially a Roman Catholic feast honoring St. Patrick on March 17th. Now, for those of you who are Roman Catholic, you understand that March 17th often falls within the season of Lent. Now, traditional feasts during that time period actually had meat. Now, for those of you that don't know, Roman Catholics during Lent will give up meat. That's one of the requirements. So in actuality, what ended up happening is with St. Patrick's Day, that practice was actually, shall we say, paused for the feast of St. Patrick. And so you'd be about roughly, give or take, roughly about halfway through Lent. And so you would get this pause and you'd be able to eat meat. Now, a traditional Irish day feast would include what is known as Irish bacon. Now, this isn't like American bacon. This is a different cut of meat off the pig. It's closer, the Irish bacon is actually closer to Canadian bacon, which most of us in America refer to as ham. And so your traditional, like actual traditional meal would be ham or Irish bacon and cabbage. Now, keep in mind, Irish bacon and Canadian bacon are slightly different in terms of the cuts that they use on the hog to get it. But for those of us in America who are generally, hard to understand, just think of it as ham. Now, it didn't shift. That actually didn't shift to corned beef until here in America. I know, it's kind of interesting. Now, the very first St. Patrick's Day parade, believe it or not, did not take place in Ireland. Records show that the very first St. Patrick's Day parade is believed to have been held on March 17th, 1601. That's right. March 17th, 1601. Oh, wait a minute. America wasn't even created in 1601. Well, what happened? Well, it was actually the very first one is believed to have occurred in the Spanish colony of St. Augustine, Florida. So St. Augustine, Florida is the very first location of a St. Patrick's Day parade. Now, keep in mind, New York City actually kind of took that over because, it happened once and they never really did it again, I don't think. But it happened to once. And it's because of the fact that it was organized by Irish vicar down there called Ricardo Artur of the time. And he was there. Obviously, he, did the traditional St. Patrick's Day feast and St. Patrick's Day parade. Now, the very first one that happened in America, after America was formed, occurred in New York City, March 17th, 1762, to honor the Irish patron saint. Now, what's interesting is that in Roman Catholic terms, in order to become a saint, you have to have been canonized in the church. But in reality, that didn't happen until long after St. Patrick's had been dead. So St. Patrick actually has never been canonized. He is considered a saint, but he was never canonized by the church. Now, after that first march, which, by the way, it was homesick Irish soldiers that were serving in the British military that created that march in New York City on March 17th, 1762. And ever since that day, enthusiasm for St. Patrick's Day parades have increased. They went from New York City and then Chicago and Boston and some other early American cities, and it only grew from there. So everybody just sort of kind of jumped on the bandwagon. Now, notice I haven't said anything yet about where the color green came from. Well, the color green was actually not used in celebration of St. Patrick's Day until the Emerald Isle, Ireland, decided to try a American Revolutionary style overthrow of the British monarchy. And what ended up happening is obviously Ireland, lost. They lost to the British. But during that time frame where they were essentially attempting the revolution, let's say, the people of Ireland would wear a shamrock in their lapel. And also that was a symbol of St. Patrick's Day, but they would wear a shamrock in their lapel, which in turn turned out to be, now they started wearing in open defiance, would wear something that would be green in order to symbolize the Irish nationalism, I guess is the best way to put it. Nationalism in, for Ireland, for the Irish. So that is where the start of wearing green and associating green with Ireland, combination, Emerald Isle, those kinds of things all sort of came together, where we started wearing green to celebrate our association with the Irish. Now, a lot of people think that it had to deal with the leprechauns. And the leprechauns, by the way, leprechaun in the original Gaelic, I think is what it's called, or Celtic language. The original word that the word leprechaun was derived out of actually meant wee folk or small folk, people who were small. They actually weren't necessarily what we consider to be a fairy. However, the Celts did actually believe in the fairy world. And so one of the things that they talked about is what the leprechaun is patterned after is they were actually shoemakers. So the folklore over this whole thing is that these shoemakers would make shoes or repair the shoes of the fairies, and they would, run around. They'd have the orange beards, obviously, because, that's just the way it is. So they'd have the orange beards, and they'd be part of the fairy folk, and they would fix the shoes of the fairies. And of course, they had pots of gold that they would protect. And so that's where that folklore kind of came into play. And then all of a sudden we just sort of started, Americanized, again, a lot of this stuff Americanized, the whole idea of St. Patrick's Day. So St. Patrick's Day, just like every other Americanized holiday, I mean, it seems to have been just grabbing a little bit of this and that and all this stuff and then mashing it together. Now, the tradition of dyeing the Chicago River green, that didn't start until, I'm not quite sure on the date, but it didn't start until later on in the century, later on in the 20th century. And what happened there is there were some, it was waterworks. It was the waterworks folks who used this green dye in order to indicate or be an indicator of where leaks occurred within the pipes. And all it was is it's basically dyed vegetable oil, food color dyed vegetable oil that is used. And so these waterworks people, they got this brilliant idea. They said, hey, the next time that St. Patrick's Day comes around, okay, the next time that this happens, we're going to go ahead and dye the Chicago River green. Well, they dumped about 100 gallons. I think it was 100 gallons. Yeah, 100 something. I think it's 100 gallons. But anyway, they dumped about 100 gallons of this stuff into the river. And, it's about 100 pounds of green vegetable dye. Not 100 gallons. 100 pounds of green vegetable dye into the river. And that made the river green for roughly about a week. And so, yeah, that just took a little bit too long to dissipate. And so in order to sort of protect the environment, minimize the environmental damage from doing so, they only dump about 40 pounds of the dye in the river, and that only keeps the river green for just a few hours. So, now, Chicago historians, and this is another little kind of interesting fact, Chicago historians claim that it was their idea. It was their city's idea to dye the river green. That was the original idea. But there's actually a town in Georgia, you may have heard of it, called Savannah. So Savannah, Georgia, reportedly began its annual St. Patrick's Day celebrations in 1813, and they actually believe the idea originated in their town. Because in their town, back in 1961, oh, and that, by the way, just now that I got the data in front of me, Chicago's annual dyeing started in 1962. So apparently in 1961, there was a hotel restaurant manager by the name of Tom Woolley who convinced city officials to dye the Savannah River green. And that experiment didn't exactly work as planned, and so the water itself only took on a slight greenish color, and Savannah never attempted to dye that river ever again. So Woolley, though, who was the hotel restaurant manager, maintains that he's the one that personally suggested the idea to Chicago's then Mayor Richard Daley. And so that's how you have, you know, the green river and the green idea, or the green coloring in the river. Now, today, of course, all of these people of all backgrounds, they celebrate St. Patrick's Day throughout the United States, Canada, Australia, for an example, although North America is the home to the largest production, because let's face it, when America does something, we don't do it half-assed. We do everything all out. So, yeah, there you go. So anyway, popular, St. Patrick's Day is also celebrated in places like Japan, Russia, Singapore. Some of popular St. Patrick's Day recipes are soda bread, corned beef and cabbage, mashed potatoes made with green onions, butter, and milk. In the United States, we often wear green because that's just the way we are. But anyway, St. Patrick's Day, of course, in Ireland is usually traditionally a spiritual and religious occasion. And in fact, many of the times, up until 1960, Irish laws actually mandated that the pubs be closed on March 17th. And it was celebrated again as more of a day where you would go off, the Roman Catholics would go off to Mass. Think about it. Think of it in kind of a way as like sort of an Easter celebration. You would go off to Mass, and you would pray all day. It would be a national holiday, et cetera, et cetera. Now that being the case, beginning in 1995, Ireland and the Irish government began a national campaign to use interest in St. Patrick's Day to, of course, drive tourism and showcase Ireland and the Irish culture to the rest of the world. So, there you go. And that's where it comes from, as far as that goes. So, and by the way, in Celtic, as far as the leprechauns, why are they always cranky and pissy and everything else? Well, they essentially, in Irish folktales, they were cranky souls. They were always mad. They were always, and tricksters. They were tricksters because obviously they had to protect their pot of gold. So that's why leprechauns, like the movie Leprechaun, for those of you that may remember here in the States, the movie Leprechaun, it was like an evil leprechaun. Now keep in mind Celtic belief in fairies were the tiny men and women who could use their magical powers to serve either good or evil. Well, the leprechauns, that's where they come from, is the serving of evil or good, depending upon where it goes. So anyway, now, fun fact, leprechauns actually have their own holiday. The leprechauns have their own holiday on May 13th, but they are also celebrated, obviously, on St. Patrick's Day. So, and for those of you who may have been around long enough, I actually did dress up for my son's Boy Scout troop. Being the assistant scoutmaster, I was the one that always had to don the costumes. So one year we had our, what they call the blue and gold celebration, which is essentially a gathering where we would promote the boys from being, say, for an example, from being a wolf to a Weeblos, or a, bear cub to a wolf cub, that kind of thing. And so when they would end the year, we would have what's, again, called the blue and gold celebration. And the blue and gold celebration, everybody in the pack, all of their friends and family, we all got together. We had a potluck. The boys would serve everybody. And just for the entertainment value, because we did the blue and gold in and around March one year, the theme was Irish. It was an Irish theme, and so therefore I got to dress up as a leprechaun, and I ran around with a pot of gold that had chocolate gold foil covered chocolate candies. So anyway. And that memory does pop up often. So there you go. Now, for those of you who go around and pinch people because they're not wearing green, that tradition actually started because of a misnomer. The idea of the misnomer was that the leprechauns, and this is part of the reason why, another like added element to why you wear green. The misnomer was that the, you want me to pull up oh boy. I think I've already pulled this one up before, but Coco says pics or it didn't happen. Well, I may have to pull that one up. Anyway, the misnomer was that if you wore green, a leprechaun could not see you. And so what a leprechaun would do on St. Patrick's Day, again, this is kind of a folklore, what a leprechaun would do on St. Patrick's Day is they would pinch everybody that they could see. And so that's where the tradition of pinching somebody who wasn't wearing green came from. Now, there's no real definitive, where that kind of started, at least as far as anybody knows now. But that's that's rumored to be why pinching happens when you don't wear green, because you're acting as the leprechaun. Oh, the leprechaun comes up and gives you a little pinch, for wearing green or for not wearing green. Anyway, so there you go. There's a huge, let's see what else here. So I already told you the real St. Patrick was actually born in Britain. Oh, another folklore tale that actually isn't really true. So one of the things that is attributed to St. Patrick is that St. Patrick, when he arrived in Ireland, that he actually drove all of the snakes off the Isle of Ireland, which is part of the reason why there's no snakes on the island today. Well, that actually likely never happened. The folklore or the legend associated with him is that he stood atop an Irish hillside and banished all the snakes from Ireland, prompting them to slither away in the sea. Now, the thing about it is a lot of people know snakes, especially in the Bible. It's known as the serpent, the that Satan became the serpent and tempted Eve to pick the apple from the tree of forbidden fruit, and then convince Adam to eat it, or to bite from it. And so a lot of our, in terms of the Roman Catholics again, we associate the snake as evil. And so because of these biblical references and everything, the legend was that he actually, did this to get rid of all the evil on the island. Well, research has actually suggested that snakes have never occupied Ireland at all. They can't find any snakes at all in the country's fossil record. And by the way, water reportedly has surrounded Ireland since the last glacial period, which basically means that during the glacial period, it was too cold for snakes to actually be there. So yeah. Anyway, so that's another bit of lore for it. Now, the shamrock, by the way, also is supposed to symbolize the arrival of spring. So the shamrock, when it grows and pops open, would symbolize the arrival of spring. But also the reason why it's associated with St. Patrick's Day is because of the fact that St. Patrick used the shamrock to visual guide to explain the Holy Trinity. Now, Ireland actually has 3 patron saints: St. Patrick, St. Columcille, and St. Brigid. St. Brigid is actually the only female patron saint of Ireland. And St. Brigid actually has her own day. St. Brigid is the patron saint of Irish nuns, newborns, midwives, dairymaids, and cattle. And she was believed to have been born in Ireland around 450 AD. She was the daughter of a pagan king and an enslaved woman. She grew up to serve the church by building a church in Kildare, which was the site of a former shrine to some Celtic goddess. So Brigid was kept alive. Her memory was kept alive after she died in 524 AD. And she was kept alive by the church and then canonized her as Saint Brigid. So in 2023, Ireland designated February 1st as the permanent public holiday in Brigid's honor. Let's see. Talked about that. Well, a lot of people don't seem to understand, but the Irish themselves were actually scorned in the United States at one point. In fact, we brought them over as slaves. The Irish were one of the white people that were enslaved by many, many groups. So yeah, there you go. But what ended up happening is part of the reason why the Irish came to America was in 1845, there was a devastating potato blight that caused widespread hunger throughout Ireland. So many people, close to 2 million people abandoned their land. 100 million people died. And the 2 million that abandoned their land became the largest single population movement of the 19th century. Most of them, nearly a quarter of the Irish nation itself at the time, came here to the shores of the United States. And when they arrived, the Irish refugees were looked down upon as being disease-ridden, unskilled, drain on welfare budgets. The immigration began to rely on St. Patrick's Day, the immigrants, I should say, began to rely on St. Patrick's Day to proudly celebrate their cultural identity. Let's see. Yeah, corned beef and cabbage, of course, is an American innovation. That's nothing unusual there. Because it was originally ham and cabbage that's eaten over in Ireland. So, And corned beef, the reason why they believe that corned beef became an American invention is because corned beef was a cheaper substitute for ham. For impoverished immigrants here, Irish Americans living in the slums of Lower Manhattan would purchase leftover corned beef from the ships returning from the tea trade in China. And the Irish would then boil the beef 3 times, the last time with cabbage, and to remove some of the brine itself. Because, again, corned beef is brined beef. So there you have it. There is a lot of folklore and tales and some of the truths about the Irish and the wonderful St. Patrick's Day celebration that we celebrate here in America. Now, my buddy, Stephen Stiles, I've had him on the program a long time ago. We were talking about hockey. Well, Stephen Stiles is actually Irish himself, and he refuses to wear green because as far as he is concerned, and I got to bring some of this up to him the next time I talk to him, but as far as he is concerned, he is 100% always Irish. And so, yeah, he doesn't need to wear green, according to him. So, yeah, there you go. Now, I do have Irish in me. I am part Irish, not a big part, but part Irish. And so, yeah, some of my family names can actually be associated not only with Irish, but also Scottish, too. That's why I want to wear a kilt one of these days. I want to get a kilt. So, anyway, I've traced back some of my lineage names back to the Scottish. We're talking about the Irish today, but the Scottish clan that I'm connected with, and I want to get a kilt in that with that color, with those colors, the clan. Now here's another kind of interesting thing. A lot of people associate kilts with the Scottish, and the Scottish, granted, they wore them. They wore them almost exclusively for a very long time. The Scottish are like definitely, but there is actually Irish kilts as well. The Irish have been known in the past to wear kilts too. So it's not just a Scottish tradition, but it also can be connected to the Irish as well. All right. Enough about St. Patrick's Day. Hopefully you guys are drinking your green beer. That's right. Yellow and blue make green. If you want green beer, all you need to do is dump a little blue food coloring in it, and it'll make it green. Because beer is generally sort of a yellowish color, unless you're drinking some really thick beer, in which case it would be more brown. Anyway, no, to answer that question, Bam, I am not wearing a kilt right now. I'm not wearing a kilt. She asked, is Rick wearing a kilt to match the hat? No, I'm not. I'm not wearing a kilt, unfortunately. I don't have a kilt. That would be fantastic, though. I want to go and get measured. There's believe me, I researched it. There's a lot to getting a kilt. And no, unlike the idea that nobody wears anything under a kilt, that's actually wrong. The proper way to wear the kilt, is with underwear. Because let's face it, and this came from a kilt maker. They were like, let's face it, not everybody wipes themselves clean. And a wool kilt is very hard to clean. It's like one of those dry clean only kind of things. So anyway, I don't know why I'm kilts. Anyway, all right, let's move on. So the Senate votes to begin debate on the SAVE Act. They are doing it right now. And the vote was 51-48 to proceed with the debate on the bill. Alaska Republican Senators Lisa Murkowski voted no. North Carolina GOP Senator Tom Tillis voted present. He didn't vote. And so, yeah, we're going to have to see how this goes, but telling you folks, 60 days was the thing, man. Now, it's no surprise that Murkowski and Tillis didn't do anything, because there are suggestions that there's going to be some GOP defectors. Obviously, Murkowski and Tom Tillis were the two initially, but they also are looking at Mitch McConnell and John Curtis. So, yeah. Mitch McConnell and John Curtis could have possibly been could possibly become defectors as well. So we're starting. This is going to be a very interesting and potentially historic kind of thing. So let's keep an eye on that. I'll try and keep my eye on it and bring it back over, bring it back and bring it up in the next several days. Hopefully it doesn't take that many days or weeks or months or years. Well, I don't think it'll go to years. We might get a couple months out of it, though. Remember that the longest filibuster in history happened from the Democrats. Yes, the Democrats are the ones that did the longest talking filibuster in history, which essentially was to filibuster the Civil Rights Act of 1965. So, yeah. Well, there was a moment. Let's move from the filibuster in America. We're going to move over to the international desk, back over to Iran. You know, it's kind of interesting. We haven't heard hardly anything in the news at all. Anything in the news about Ukraine, which reportedly the Ukraine-Russia war is still happening. I mean, that hasn't ended yet. So we haven't heard anything about that. So this is going to be kind of interesting where that goes. But before I move on, though, and I want to talk about NATO members and the war in Iran and everything else. Before I talk about that, though, I want to take a break really quick and talk to you about Rumble Premium. That's right. As you've probably noticed, Rumble is growing fast and it's not slowing down. They're building a real alternative to big tech that puts creators first and actually protects free speech. And now there's Rumble Premium, which is an easy way to upgrade your experience on Rumble. With Premium, you get ad-free viewing across the platform. No pre-rolls, no interruptions, just the content that you came for. Plus, Premium members unlock exclusive content like bonus videos, behind-the-scenes drops, and more from all of your favorite creators. Right now, Rumble is offering a $10 off an annual subscription. Just go to rumble.com/premium. That's rumble.com/premium. Use the promo code STUDIO at checkout. That's rumble.com/premium using the promo code STUDIO at checkout to get that $10 off the annual subscription. Rumble.com/premium. No ads, more freedom, and the content that you actually care about. That's the deal. Go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO to get that $10 off the annual subscription. All right. Well, Trump, of course, realizing the Strait of Hormuz and being a very key component to many countries' oil exports from the Persian Gulf and the Middle East. You know, Trump says, hey, you guys over there, like Japan, which gets a large portion of it from there, places like, China, which wants the war to end, and even Europe. There's a lot of countries that depend upon oil that passes through the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump basically said, hey, look, you know what? It would really help if you guys, meaning NATO, could come in and some European nations, hey, come in and help us out. Help us out. Get us some of this, help us to defend the strait from the attacks and the ships running through it from Iran. Well, unfortunately, the NATO members all basically said, yeah, we know that it's really important and, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? We're not going to help you. And I got to tell you, kind of makes me wonder if there should be a tit for tat on this. Seriously. I mean, we're over there. We're halfway around the world. Now, if we took an isolationist stance out of all of this, and gone back into our I think even pre-World War I scenario, and said, look, that's a European thing, or in this case, that's a Middle East thing, and did nothing, yeah, I think that would have caused a lot more unrest in the world. And now that the NATO members have basically said, yeah, guess what? We're not gonna get involved. Trump has expressed his disappointment with those allies. Did that today. But he did praise the support of the local partners that are actually in the Middle East, which is pretty much all of the Arab nations that surround Iran, because they know that a Iranian regime that supports terrorism creates an unstable region in the area. Now, yes, you could sit here and say things like, well, the U.S. and Israel started this on their own kind of thing. But the fact of the matter is, people, that we have taken out or have taken on one of the largest and most prevalent banking systems of terrorism pretty much across the globe. I mean, anywhere Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iran funds a whole bunch of other places, they do this. All of these terror proxies that they work with and destabilize things because of the fact that they literally have said since 1979, death to America. And so all of those lefties and all of you people who are out there, like Joe Kent, for an example, who, by the way, just resigned as I think the deputy of counterterrorism or something. Anyway, he resigned and blamed the administration for getting into the war with Iran with the idea that, hey, Iran wasn't really bothering us. There's no reason for us to be in Iran. Now, again, I'm going to point this out, folks, because I just said it, and I'm going to say it again. Iran has been waging war against the United States, even though we have acted as though it's just an irritating fly, and every so often swatted it away, since 1979. Trump is not going to do that. Trump has basically said, you know what? They're pretty damn close to getting a nuclear weapon. And believe me, Iran having a nuclear weapon, given their propensity for violence, don't think for a second that they wouldn't use it, especially on Israel. So the entire Middle East would become a radioactive wasteland very quickly. Now, we all know that Israel is not going to allow that to happen, but Israel by itself may not have been able to handle all of the Arab nations, had all of the Arab nations not joined with the United States and Israel in approving the Iran strikes. So all of these people who are sitting here complaining about the Iran war and saying, oh, no, Trump started it. No, Trump didn't. Trump is ending it. End of story. He is not going to allow the Iranian regime to have a foothold, especially on a nuclear weapon, which is exactly what they were doing. They were enriching uranium far beyond what the Obama peace accord or nuclear treaty, whatever you want to call it, the Obama nuclear treaty with them, they had enriched it far beyond what they were allowed to. And they did it on purpose because they were attempting to gain a nuclear weapon. Now, another thing that the rhinos, I'm going to call them the rhinos, but the rhinos of the right sit there and talk about, oh, this isn't our war. Israel got us into it. No, they didn't. Because if you recall correctly, too, that both Obama and Biden gave Iran pallets of cash in an attempt to appease them. And as I've said on this program multiple times, and I'll still say it again, you cannot appease those people. They look at appeasement as weakness. The only thing that they understand is power and strength. That's it. There is nothing else. They look at weakness as an aberration. They look at it as a way to exploit whoever it is that they view as weak. And so you must constantly portray strength with them. So if Donald Trump had not gone in with Israel on this, they, meaning Iran, and even some of the Arab nations, would have likely viewed it as weakness. Not only that, but you also have to remember, too, China and Russia are watching this very, very closely. China specifically. Russia's already, invaded Ukraine. They took the advantage both under Obama and Biden because both of those presidents were weak. But as far as China's looking at this and thinking, hey, maybe we can invade Taiwan if this goes badly for Trump or Trump portrays any kind of weakness. So this is not just simply a war against Iran, a war against terrorism. This is an establishment of American power and strength in front of the world all over again because of the fact that we had people like Obama and Biden, weak presidents in the office who believed that diplomacy with people who do not recognize diplomacy as being a strength, that they were going to back down and just do whatever we wanted in order to acquiesce. And they won't do that. They only understand one thing and one thing only. Whoever gets smacked the hardest is what they understand. They are the pinnacle of what I call the bully syndrome. See, bullies don't understand anything. Bullies don't understand anything when it comes to trying to reason, trying to logically get them out, trying to appease them. They don't understand any of that. They only understand one thing and one thing only. And that is, are you going to fight back? And is it going to take them or make it harder for them to bully you further? Or even better yet, are you stronger than they are? And that's what this boils down to. All righty, folks. That is it for me for this evening. First, before we take off, I do not have a pet of the week for tomorrow. I also don't have any emergency backups for tomorrow. So if you guys want a pet of the week, you got to get them in. Send them in to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. Oh, really quick. I know you, let's see. Somebody was saying Coco DeWhiskey had Amazing Grace. Yeah. So her husband, Coco DeWhiskey's husband, well, Coco D, insert name here, was saying that her husband was listening to Amazing Grace on the bagpipes. That personally is my absolute favorite at a funeral. That and taps. Those are like my two favorite things. If you can have a favorite thing at a funeral. Thinking about that probably didn't come out quite the way that I intended it to. But anyway, all right. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. And once you are signed up and signed in, make sure you follow the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to get notified. Green follow button to get notified every time that I go live. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And good night, everybody.